Hi, and welcome to this session of Imbibe Live Online, part of Global Bar Week. I'm Lucy Brittner, a drinks journalist, and over the next hour, we're going to be discussing trends in terms of drinks menus and consumer tastes. We're going to talk about how they might have changed over the past few months and what we can expect going forward. I'm delighted to be joined today by Julian Ferrell, Mark Austin, Zoe Cunliffe, and Chris Tanner. Before we get started, I'd just like to remind you that you can ask questions throughout. Please use the box to the right of your screen. And we'll also be running a poll, so check that out as well. Okay, so first I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves properly and tell us a bit about their experiences in the drinks industry. So Julian, why don't we start with you?
Hello, Julian Ferrell. I'm an independent consultant. I've been consulting internationally over the past 10 years, primarily with Gorgeous Group, but also now privately. I guess in my experience, I've put together or helped to form perhaps over 100 different cocktail menus for all sorts of bars, restaurants. And consistently over the past few years, I've been one of the judges that Imbibe have kindly invited me for the drinks list of the year. So yeah, that's me. About 20 years in the industry altogether. Obviously prior to that as a bartender.
Thanks, Julian. Chris, how about you?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the bars director for the Proofing Room and the Vault, part of the Milroy's group. I've been bartending for coming up to 10 years now. And before I was at Milroy's, I was at Milk and Honey, as well as in various openings and consultancies around London. Sort of cocktail bars, hotels, members clubs. Yeah, about eight coming up to 10 years now.
Great. And Zoe?
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the co-owner of Mixology Group. We are a bartending school in Brighton. We also run mobile bars for events and offer consultancy, and we've been doing that for the last 10 years now.
Great. And Mark, last but not least.
Hello, I'm Mark Austin. So I work for Arc Inspirations, which is a northern-based group, 17 bars. I've been working with them now 13 years. Some would say the unlucky year, 13 years, and been look after all their drinks development, all the drinks trade, design of the bars as we've expanded. So we've got 3 brands currently, so 3 brands across the company, slightly different structures and drinks across that. So quite a good bit of experience there. Looking forward to today.
Great, thank you. So we're going to start by looking back over the past few months. And what I want to ask is, how do you think bars have been reshaping menus in terms of ingredients, flavours and techniques? Julian?
So I think it's quite clear that the trend of doing batches and bottling has really caught on for obvious reasons, particularly during lockdown and especially with a second lockdown imminent. So people have really been pressing the fast forward button when it comes to pre-batching, and then obviously as costs are becoming a concern and people are really trying to keep the bottom line down, stuff like wastage, people are looking at ways of getting around that. So I think we're perhaps seeing slightly less rare and exotic ingredients, particularly in terms of fresh or seasonal, and people relying more on stuff like acids and whatnot to come up with consistent and balanced drinks that they can pre-batch easily. And I'd kind of estimated, and wrongly, sorry, I should mention that I occasionally write for Imbibe as well, but I did a piece a few weeks after lockdown, which was kind of predicting what was going to happen really in terms of cocktails. And I predicted incorrectly that perhaps people or bars would start utilizing sort of more rail spirits, if you want to call it that, or sort of less super premium or premium spirits, just again looking at kind of the costs. But happily, I was wrong. And really over the past few weeks, what I've seen in the bar managers that I've spoke to actually have been saying the opposite. And for them, it's been an opportunity to present new, wonderful, slightly unusual spirits particularly on cocktail menus that consumers perhaps may not have had the luxury to have just buying it from the supermarket. So in fact, with that, it seems to have actually been turned on its head. And it does seem to be a market out there for consumers to really explore unusual things that they normally would have drunk. And there seems to be a real thirst for it as well, literally and figuratively.
Is that something you're finding, Chris?
Yeah, certainly. With the proofing room, I think we were always kind of pushing to do more bottled cocktails and RTDs. So we were able to start producing those during lockdown. And as Julian said, I think as well, doing those bigger batches means it's easier for us to mitigate costs. And it gives us an opportunity to do something that we can sell online through our e-commerce and through the website, and have a product that we can give to people without them coming on site. And certainly with the guests that are coming on site since, they're definitely looking for better, not necessarily better products, but they're more open to how they spend their money. It's a lot less guarded about it.
Right. And Mark, you've got 3 different brands that you mentioned there. How have you seen it kind of across the brands in terms of, have you seen different trends in different brands because the different brands attract different consumers, or have you taken the same approach for the whole group?
It's kind of all concentrated. So a big thing we've seen is obviously the demographic that's going out is kind of narrowed a bit. So it's a lot of the young people out there, so they're driving the trends across all 3 of the brands. So we've had to rapidly shrink the size of the menu, still bring stuff exotic. So as Julian was saying, people still want something different. They've all been trying to make certain drinks at home and trying to experiment, whereas now they're going somewhere they can actually get it well made, well done. So that, I think cocktail trends, especially in our company, has gone through the roof. It's really rapidly risen quicker than I thought it would do. On the flip side, I think it sort of stunted a lot of trends like low and no and other things that will maybe just get a bit of traction. There is a sense of familiarity that they want something good, they're willing to spend the money. But actually the young, they want a lot of drinks, cocktails, especially in the north.
What kind of cocktails are we talking? Are there any particular standouts?
Love it or hate it, the porn star just seems to show no slowing, and the variety, whether it's twisted into a long drink, a sharing drink, trees, it's exploded. And we tend to find anything we put red berries or made it red, again, seem to also fly out. So there is still a simplicity. Please don't say it's because we're northern, but there is a simplicity in it that people still want those good drinks, those quality drinks, and that's what's really driven it forward.
And Zoe, just in terms of your business and kind of techniques and trends and ingredients and things, what have you noticed over the past few months that's really been accelerated?
I've noticed around the bars of Brighton that a lot of people are using more shrubs within their drinks. I think it's an easier way to keep hold of your fruit and to use local produce. There's been a glut of fruit this year as well, which I'm hoping to see more and more of in people's drinks. And yeah, so there's been shrubs and the use of oleosaccharum. So they're trying to get more out of their drinks. We teach people how to do both of those things, and we're like heavily into the dehydrating, which I noticed in a lot more bars around town as well.
I've got a question here from the audience. Have cocktails seen a downturn since COVID? Probably one for the bar operators there.
We've seen the opposite. Ours has kind of really catapulted. We used to have quite a strong blend of beer, cocktails, but partly whether it's price driven, we do have a very good offering on it, or then it's just something different that you could buy beer, you could buy a spirit mixer, you could do them at home, whereas cocktails is you escape to enjoy a cocktail, you've got a limited time in a bar, go out, enjoy yourself, gather together. We've seen it kind of drive forward, if anything.
How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I think I've not seen a decline in cocktail sales. Like us, we've always been sort of dedicated cocktail bars, and our split is still very much like 90% cocktails, 95% cocktails. I think people who are going out for cocktails, or people who are going out, they're seeking something more experiential now.
Mm-hmm. And actually that's, I remember we talked before about escapism and the importance of the kind of escapist drinks. So Julian, you were talking about kind of retro disco drinks. Do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, I guess, as Mark's sort of touched on already, of course, whenever there's something like this comes along, whether it's a recession or just a general sort of bad feeling, people are naturally going to be driven to drinks which help them sort of forget about it, and not just because of boozy content, but those sort of exotic flavors. So although I said earlier on, maybe people perhaps not trying to garnish their drinks with really expensive mini pineapples or source the rarest ingredients, that's not to say that people aren't looking for exotic drinks such as the porn star martini or whatever, whether you want to call them disco drinks, tropical drinks, or tiki drinks. Any of those sort of categories work, giving the feeling that it's like being on a holiday, but then also it's something that you were perhaps less geared to make for yourself at home. I'm sure by now everybody knows how to make spritzers and gin and tonics at home. Even the less adventurous, I would imagine, over lockdown would have been doing that. But yeah, I mean, speaking to some of my friends who manage bars, again, we're definitely seeing cocktails on the up. I think I spoke to Steve from the Wigmore, which is obviously sort of aligned as like a luxury tavern. So it's always been very deep in wine and beer sales, but he's seen a massive increase of cocktails over the past, or since they opened. And same for my local dive bar, which is before lockdown was very much a sort of a beer and a shot kind of place. You'd go there for a Jaeger or a Fireball and a sort of a cheap lager, and cocktails are flying out. So yeah, definitely people are looking for anything to sort of distract from their troubles and woes. They aren't looking for necessarily something which is high tech or they have to think about so much. I don't think it's necessarily high concept, but again, alluding to what Mark mentioned, it's about just simple, delicious drinks which are fun, essentially. We need a bit of light in our life.
And there's certainly been a lot of, I know my Instagram has been full of pictures of Artesian's kind of retro disco menu. And Chris, you were talking about the practicalities before of running those kind of menus. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I think certainly sadly, the teams are smaller in the hospitality industry. And there are a few people that have no longer on the teams and realistically, it's not possible now to have these huge prep shifts, asking people to come in and make all the stuff for a really high concept menu. People don't have the teams to do that, and without working their teams ragged, the ones that are left. So I think doing these kind of disco drinks or more pared back concepts and menus, I think is an opportunity for bartenders to have fun, enjoy themselves a bit, but also kind of operate within the practicalities of having smaller teams and the unsurety of making something that may not last, or if you got things that are going to go off and you end up getting shut down.
Yeah. Okay, another question from the audience. Are RTDs ruining the user experience and fading out the art of mixology? I'm going to come back to you, Chris, because I know that you are a big fan of the pre-mixed drink.
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I love RTDs. I think go for it. Like I'm not a huge beer drinker. And sometimes in a bar, I don't want to drink martinis all night, but I do want to have a can of something cold and low ABV. So I know, so Kanpai in Peckham, they do really delicious like yuzu and cucumber cans of sake, something like that. I think is a really nice opportunity for a bar to show its collaborations, to show kind of what their direction is, and at the same time mitigating the work of the bartender and giving people really good products. Certainly making them in-house as well. It's a great opportunity for bartenders to show, to have a bit of fun, have a bit of a flex, because maybe where we can't do huge high concept menus, maybe we can put our energy into doing great high concept RTD menus.
Yeah, and RTDs aren't really what they used to be. Certainly not the ones I was drinking when I was probably not old enough. Zoe, what do you think in terms of training? I mean, you're still seeing lots of people wanting to train to be bartenders. You're not suddenly seeing people coming to you saying, show me how to make pre-mixed drinks.
No, we're not. We're still seeing people that want to still learn the art of mixology, which is great. We've been very busy over the last couple of months with people coming into the school, which is a relief. And a lot of online stuff. We took everything online as soon as we could, as many things as we could, which we're still working on at the moment. But yeah, there seems to still be a definite thirst for it. People are still out there. People who have been made redundant from other fields and always fancied trying their hat at that, we're getting some of those through the door, even if it's just for a one-day course to come and test the water, really.
Yeah. How do you think brand involvement has changed over the past few months? Certainly marketing budgets have been moved from place to place for some of the big drinks companies, and that might have had some effects on bars and bar menus. Who wants to jump in on that?
Yeah, okay, I can start. So yeah, I mean, as you say, it's fairly clear that budgets for everybody, isn't it? Not just for bars or operators, but yeah, certainly for brands have been heavily affected, and so and of course people have been furloughed and such, and you've got smaller teams and all the rest of it. So it stands to reason that we're seeing a lot less involvement with brands in terms of menus and support in terms of stock and also glassware or any POS or activations. Naturally they're going to be very precautious about having like menu launches and parties or investing a few grand in a menu which people aren't allowed to touch. So it just puts them in a very interesting position, and you've got bars, brands which clearly have to act with extreme caution as to how they sort of proceed. So I guess what we will see perhaps is perhaps menus which rely less on brands and keep it a little bit more free and easy, and it has to be reactive because every week we're learning something else. So there's always this insecurity. It's hard to sort of now put together a menu, invest a lot of money in it, and be confident that that menu is going to be running for the entirety of the year. We don't know whether we're going to have a menu in 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a tricky game.
Mark, what has been your experience of sort of brand involvement over the past few months?
A lot of it would echo what Julian said, that a lot of the guaranteed success has just been taken out and the rug's been pulled out from underneath them. And a lot of these brands are based on mass market volume that potentially has just disappeared. So we're seeing that they want to do a lot more statement pieces, activate, where if the menu's there, they want to know that their brand is out there in the public eye and consciousness more than ever. It's not just on a menu anymore. There's it's a real statement piece, or a lot of outside activations, spaces, takeovers, rather, that guarantees them some level of success. But yeah, they are definitely holding back a lot more because they're in the same boat, really. It's just we're all in the same boat, which for once it's not just that bar struggling, it's everyone. So it's across the sector. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes moving forward, and because every time we think we're ready to move forward, it changes again, and it's such a dynamic field at the moment.
Yeah. And so you were making a point about stock allocation as well when we spoke previously. Do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, the brands have been very tricky to get hold of, and usually we would contact them for projects to see what kind of stock support we could get with them. But I feel almost like I'm having to start again with all of who the brand reps are out there, because so many people have let go, have changed jobs. They're just not there at the moment. And the people that are still there are trying to do about 10 people's jobs. So it's trying to track down the right person and hope that at the end of the day, they have got some sort of support there to give you, which not that many of them do at the moment, or it really depends on the project, I imagine.
Yeah.
I think something we didn't mention last time, actually, that's just something which kind of ties in with that, is also suppliers. over the past.
Yeah.
It's also hit them again, completely understandably. It's hit them really hard. So even if you have certain brand deals in place and you've got a great relationship and you've relearned who your rep is and you've come up with a new creative way of working with them, I'm hearing horror stories where people can't get Coca-Cola or Aperol because they're the suppliers, and I guess maybe they don't want to advertise it as much, but that it seems like a lot of them are either going into administration or they're getting into a fair bit of debt, especially over the lockdown, and their teams have all been sort of reduced, so it's extremely hard to even sometimes get basic things, which again just adds to the sort of insecurity and the worry of listing stuff on a menu.
Yeah. And Chris, what about your experience in London?
Yeah, I think that everyone is unsure about the future, and the sad truth is with this is an industry that runs a lot on credit terms, and so there is people are a lot more cautious, and I think not really willing to take risks in terms of how a supplier or how a brand can commit to a bar or a brand or a menu, and how if they can support a bar or if a bar can commit to volume commitments. There's so many variables that we just don't have a clear idea of what's going to happen in the future, so no one can really make those commitments.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to change the subject completely. So I want to look back at what we got right and what we got wrong during lockdown. Maybe this is a good place to talk about pre-bottled cocktails and takeaway especially. Chris, what were your experiences of that?
I think, we had a great time. It was hard work. We were set up, I think, already to start bottling drinks and to create a delivery product and a takeaway product. I think looking at a lot of the bars in London, so many people moved really quickly, and it was amazing to see. Creating really good products, serving their communities, their regulars, the neighborhood that they're in, and kind of I think bringing people together around the support and trying to support what they were doing. It was really, really great, and but I think seeing that across London was phenomenal.
And is it something you're going to carry on doing?
It is, yeah. We were so stoked with the response to the drinks that we were doing, that we're going to be putting out a product that we're going to add to our stable of brands, something that we can pursue in the long term.
And Mark, did you go into any kind of takeaway or pre-bottled?
No, so it's something we're looking at now. I think more never with the curfew rather than the lockdown. During lockdown, it's quite a hard balance with the scale of commercials on it that our bars are built for mass people, 400 or 500 people in there. And I saw some amazing drinks out there in the Leeds area, those independents that are doing these great bold drinks, but to replicate that, deliver to the right people, the right areas, unfortunately would have meant the reverse. It would have cost us more to make sure we delivered that right. So we held back from it. We didn't get involved. And then now is more when we're looking at it that it's that additional extra experience at the end of the night rather than a whole separate category for us.
Right. And Zoe, you were talking about the actual practicalities of delivery being quite difficult for some people.
Yeah, well, it's a whole new thing to have to learn for a business, especially if you don't do takeouts already, and suddenly you're having to create an entire pre-bottled cocktail menu and then work out how to get your bookings in, market that, and then deliver them on time. That's a whole new system that needs to be built, that's reliant on people having cars and bikes and being able to get out there, and just it's expecting everybody to totally change their job for however long, and I know that some bars really succeeded in Brighton and some did for a couple of weeks or a month or so, and then it totally dropped off. We changed what we did here. We started cocktail masterclasses online and sending out cocktail boxes to people in the post, which again turned us into fulfillment for a while rather than doing what we usually do, which is a totally different thing. Our office became a packing centre, and our school, as did our school, just surrounded by boxes and packaging for a while. But it, you know, you have to do what you've got to do. And there was a definite thirst for that as well. You know, people did still want to try cocktails at home.
Yeah. Anything else that anyone wants to mention about what we got right and what we got wrong during lockdown? Any learnings that they want to share?
I think from what we saw a lot of bars up north do is keep that engagement with people. What was quite interesting, we saw a lot for the first time of people on Facebook, Instagram. They were showing what they were drinking at home, showing what they were trying to make and what they were attempting to do. And you had a different engagement piece where then when they came back to the bars, you knew what they were enjoying and what they liked to drink, and you could then tweak your experience towards it. So I think it was quite an interesting piece around engaging on a different level, because as Zoe said, we couldn't serve them in a bar. We had to just think differently and engage differently. So I think that's quite an interesting thing that we saw in lockdown, and a lot of bars did very well, engaged really well with it, I think.
Loads of questions. Sorry, Julian, were you going to say something?
Just from a brand perspective, some of the way that the brands or brand representatives have been communicating with sort of the industry, not just consumers, but particularly the industry, you know, with their sort of care packages and all that kind of stuff, especially I guess in the initial month or so before things became a little bit more disheartening or sort of layoffs started to increase. I think you had a lot of people who work for brands who normally have a big budget. They're always out and about, and they were just getting a little bit stir crazy, but that manifested itself in some cases in really quite nice creative ways. And you got these little care packages which had all of these personal touches that typically, you know, they wouldn't have had a chance to do. So my partner Abby, who works for Vanguard Brands, she bought a clay set and started to make like a ceramic bits and pieces and send out food. I would work on playlist for people to listen to at home whilst they ate and drank stuff that would send over. You had Willie from Vestal Vodka who'd be sending out Polish sausages and pickles with little handwritten notes, you know, all of that kind of stuff. I think, you know, that came at obviously a really good time where people were just so confused about what was good, where the future lied. And it was just, you know, I guess the positive thing generally about this whole lockdown thing is that, you know, there has been a bit more sort of a value or a reassessment of value on a heartfelt communication and genuine creativity. You know, people phone each other a lot more and talk to each other a lot more. So although we can't necessarily see each other as much, you know, there's some of the creative ways that people have been dealing with that have been, just very positive and heartening to see.
So a question from the audience: how do the panel think brands can best support their customers in the coming few months? So that was a good to look back there, but what can they do going forward?
Well, if I may, I think moving forward, so like we've discussed, there's we're not sure about what the future holds for all of us in the industry. I think the best thing that brands can do is to be adaptive and to maybe tailor what they can produce more to the needs of on a smaller scale to their consumers, to their bars. It's going to be, we're all going to be leaning on each other at some point, and I think it's really important that we're all just ready to adapt to what each other need.
Yeah, it's definitely not throwing money at it anymore, or just kind of. I don't think anybody is necessarily looking for an extravagant party, and you know, people. I think it's a bit of a back to basics attitude, and as very much as Chris says, a very sort of personalised approach. That if the brands can do it with whatever capacity, it is just keeping that communication to individual accounts or bars and operators strong and personal.
Anything else, Mark? What would you like to see?
Yeah, I think for me, it's kind of the brands really supporting keeping something special within the bars. You know, the way that the shops, the supermarkets at the moment, they're doing great sales through them and people going there. It's become more and more easy to sit at home, click and collect something, from a shop. You don't have to go out. So ensuring that there's something still unique and driven through the bars, I think, and back us that it will be tough. But I think the more support there's there, they bring us those things that we can really shout about, talk about, so the consumers will be really good, and realise we are a big portal for them to get to consumers. So maintaining that would be a great support over the next sort of few months or years, depending on what goes on.
Yeah. And Zoe, what about from your business's point of view?
Just stay in touch with us, really. I mean, we're a movable beast. We're having to change what we do constantly. I'm constantly full of new bright ideas that it would be great to just keep running past brands and seeing how they can help and how we can work together.
So another question along similar lines, from an operator point of view, would a combined brand and customer digital activation be a benefit? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
Just trying to work out how that would work with what we do.
I think there's yes on some levels. I think it depends on the brand, depends on the bar. Some things more digitally led will work and others won't.
Yeah.
I think just to tie that into what we were saying before, I think just communication and collaboration is key, and it has to be tailored to the individual needs of the bars and the operators.
Yeah.
But, and if it is some sort of a platform online, I would hasten to say, again, just trying to apply creativity and understanding what the sort of end goal is, what your market is that you're looking to push something through the screen on, because I think there was a saturation probably a couple of months ago of just everybody just making drinks at home. Look at me making a Negroni at home. Look at me making a gin and tonic. And whilst that's fine, I think, that's kind of like run its course a little bit. And I'm not saying, don't film yourself making drinks at home, but I'm just thinking if it is going to be a collaboration of a bar and a brand, it'll be interesting to see, I guess, a little bit more substance behind it and some thought and care and creativity to actually, say something new using that platform in a proactive way, instead of constantly sort of retroactively looking back and going, oh, remember when we used to make these behind a bar.
And then just going back to menus and to our core topic here, it'd be good to talk about the menus themselves and how they've actually changed. I mean, Julian, I know you were talking about A4 sheets of paper or laminates and QR codes. If you could talk about what you've seen out there and how you think they're going to carry on in the future.
So I think we've certainly seen a shift towards more simple presentations of menus. Again, to reiterate what I said earlier on, you're not going to have even the sort of the high-end fancy luxury bars or your fancy hotel bars or anything like that, whereas they might have previously invested a lot of time and money into putting together physical menus. It's telling that you're now seeing some of these same bars just present very simple, very tightly edited lists of cocktails just printed on an A4 piece of paper, knowing that once the guest has finished with it, they're going to have to throw it out. QR codes abound, everybody's kind of getting back into that. I remember that was a few years ago that came out and everybody was like, wow, this is great. And then people, I think, maybe didn't like the fact it seemed a bit desensitized. It didn't seem it didn't seem great for a bar where you're trying to get people to look up rather than looking onto their phone. However, obviously when needs must, and a lot of bars are doing that, which is kind of cool. Maybe we'll see a little bit more with that experience, a little bit more creativity on that front, and people I know figuring out how to make interactive digital menus or something like that. And then there's been other bars which have been laminating things so they could wipe it down. Obviously, it doesn't it doesn't really scream luxury, but it's just kind of it's a necessity. The only bar that I can think of that has released something which is kind of that old school, wow, look at this, they've put a lot of effort into it, was a few weeks ago. I went to see the Baccarat bar at Harrods, but obviously that investment went in way before lockdown and the pandemic. But yeah, it's a stunning menu, and it would be a shame to lose those kind of menus. So I hope it doesn't die out completely. But I think certainly we'll see a sort of reassessment of the importance of having to have leather-bound books with 200-300 cocktails spanning back to like the 19th century or what have you, and maybe just thinking about what a guest actually asking for, staying reactive and being able to print out a fresh menu every day with 8 to 10 cocktails, making them fun and understandable. People also don't want to spend, I think, that much time in a bar reading through these books anymore, and that was something that was happening anyway.
Right. And Zoe, you were talking about kind of changing consumer behaviours in terms of looking at phones and things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of everybody arriving into a bar and sitting down and all instantly having to get on your phone. It instantly loses, what you're going to a bar for, to look at each other and chat. But that said, there are some good QR codes that I've seen lately. I'm really interested to see if the brands could work with bars on creating some really amazing apps with those kinds of things on. I think that might be a way forward for everybody to get a bit of help from brands and a bit more exposure for the brands, etc. And it does mean that you can keep your drinks menu fresh, as you were saying. If you can't get hold of specific items that day, you've got to reprint your menus anyway. So you can keep it small and concise, but keep it fresh as well.
Mark, what are you doing in terms of menus?
So we've invested quite heavily in QR codes and creating with a bespoke company a list. It's all online to the point where some of our venues are 90% ordering off their phones, which is a huge shift for us, a huge dynamic shift where you're not stood at a bar anymore looking at the bar, picking what you want to choose. You're sat at a table in the back corner. How much do you want to scroll? How much will you scroll? What do you want to flick through? Now you see the prices. It's a huge change, and even just that technology side of it, of how we sell drinks. And I don't want to lose physical menus. I think there's a bit of magic in it, and I think there's a bit of different people see them for different ways, and it is that something to behold and look at and entice people. But it's trying to understand whether even the younger demographics, that everything is now via a phone and they're time conscious, and they could probably pick an order quicker on a phone and sat there taking the time on a menu. So there's also the revenue side. It's quite an interesting area. I think will really open up over the next year or so.
And Chris, what are you doing for your menus?
So we've always had small menus, and we've tried to have menus that are quite reactive. Certainly concepts-wise with our East London site, we are going to be paring it back quite a bit and kind of catering it more towards the immediate neighbourhood and the community that's around us, and going much more for neighbourhood vibes. I think at the moment that's something that people want, and I think Julian's right, is kind of maybe I think it's important for us to be reactive and to listen to the guests and kind of give them what they want.
Yeah. So in terms of what guests want, we spoke about this a little bit before, about people wanting to get back into bars to spend a bit more money maybe and try be a bit more experimental. I mean, do you think that that's really a long-term trend, or do you think that's a knee-jerk reaction to being at home for so long? And do you think people are going to become more adventurous in the future, or are we all going to go back to our faithful brands? Zoe, you look like you want.
I think that we'll try new things for sure, but the Mojito crew will still be out there, thank God, because without them we probably wouldn't be here right now. So they'll still be there trying the same drinks as usual, but let's hope that they're coming out there trying new things as well with it. I think everyone's going to be playing around at home a lot more. The Porn Star Martini is a massive one, even for us. But it's across the board still, isn't it? Everybody is ordering it in every bar. I hope that they'll be looking at more new and interesting things as well. But I think long term, we're still going to be ordering Cosmopolitans and Mojitos and Porn Star Martinis in every bar.
And Chris, you made the point about people from a kind of more rural demographic, say, being able to get more stuff online through lockdown.
I think the media, the internet, the press was an amazing tool for seeing bartenders and bars put together tasting sets, subscription sets, ranging from orange wine to artisanal mezcal, that perhaps would have been ordinarily very much catered to like a very kind of metropolitan audience. But with this kind of louder voice that the media offered us, you can see people, it means you can get a set of artisanal mezcals delivered to you in the middle of nowhere. And maybe people were willing to experiment a little bit more and to expand their horizons. And hopefully that's something that when the bars do return to, when the industry returns to normal, that's something they'll bring with them.
Mm-hmm. And also in terms of consumer tastes, Mark, you mentioned this a bit at the beginning about health and wellness and the kind of no and low category maybe having stalled a little bit. But then there is, on the other hand, this talk of health and wellness. I don't know if it's just us drinks journalists that keep writing articles about how everyone's more bothered about that, or whether people genuinely are more bothered about that. But it would be interesting to know your thoughts on where it's going to go in the next year or so. Are people going to be more interested in low and no, or has that sort of faded away?
I think from what we've seen is not so much the no and low. I think the full booze, a little lighter, that's why the spritz are so big, these lighter versions. But I think low and no is in a very, for me anyway, a grey area where it's either you're not drinking or you're having a drink. It's very kind of such minimal amounts going in it that what do you actually want to try and drink? And we've just not really seen it up here that people still want to go out. If they're going to spend the money, they want to know they're getting a drink. They want to go out on a Tuesday, Wednesday. They want their cocktail. They want their beer. They want their wine. They'll save their moderation for at home, if anything. But that's what the lockdown changes. It's the first time in forever. There was 3 months where people slowed down their pace. They thought about their health. They thought about the money, their lifestyle. And, Stoptober is still going on that people know around the industry. So I think that part of it will continue. People looking at their well-being. I just don't yet know how it will transpire into the drinks as such.
Zoe, what about you? What do you think?
I think that I've had a big think about that this week, trying to work out whether it's just because I keep reading about it that I think it's a thing. But I think that there is a market for it Monday to Thursday, but people go out to have a drink usually. And although we have run a cocktail competition and a mocktail competition with O2 Priority during lockdown, and we did get over 62,000 entrants for the mocktail competition. So there are people out there which, that do want to learn how to do things with these no and low drinks. I just don't seem to know that many of them.
And Chris, what about you? What have you seen?
I think certainly in terms of health and well-being, I think it's important that I think there is a very strong focus on mental health, and it's important that continues. Very much in terms of no and low, I think, it is there, it exists, and there's amazing creativity out there. And I think, this was supposed to be like the year of no and low, so much noise being made. There was a huge event planned at the Truman Brewery. Sadly, I think that's all been on hold now. So I think it will happen, but maybe it's just been pushed back a little bit. Just put the brakes on that for a minute, and maybe next year we'll see another huge no and low explosion. I think maybe a lot of people have got a little bit more disposable income at the moment. Well, for the people who are fortunate enough to keep their jobs or be part of the furlough scheme. And there's certainly an emphasis on kind of quality over quantity. And maybe when people are going out, rather than going no and low, just kind of going less and more thought out, a bit more curated. Yeah.
And then Julian, you made a point about people's priorities perhaps when they're shopping.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's still going to be a market for no ABV cocktails. It's not like these people have just disappeared overnight. This is something that's been growing for years. So the market's still there, but as to whether it's kind of having the traction that it had before lockdown, it doesn't seem like it. So I think kind of the way I summed it up last time was something like yes to low, but no to not no, if that makes sense. No ABV, not so much low ABV. I think people are definitely maybe getting on board within reason with that during lockdown. It can be more cost effective. It's so simple to put together a spritz, particularly during the summer. Obviously, it's refreshing. But then also, if we've got the government pushing back the sort of opening times of bars, then people are obviously getting more acclimatized to the idea of day drinking, whether it's from home or in a bar. And so, of course, human beings don't typically smash three dry martinis over lunch. I think we will see or continue to see a rise in low ABV cocktails, not non-alcoholic products. Particularly the high-end ones, and not to single out a particular brand, but I think what I mentioned last time was, if we kind of spiral off into another lockdown and panic buying, I just fail to see people scrambling for to empty the supermarket shelves of Seedlip rather than toilet roll. That people aren't going to be necessarily going for that as a top priority. I'm not saying the category's dead or even necessarily dying. I think it's just probably been put on pause for a little bit until people sort of figure out what's actually going on.
And then just another question from the audience, and this is kind of a practical question. What new trends and things can be considered to stay afloat during this climate? Anybody want to jump in? Chris, you look like you do.
Well, I think well, we've touched on RTDs, batching cocktails. I think it's important to, like we said, it's important to listen to the consumer and kind of give the people around you, the people who are supporting you, kind of what they want. I think pivoting to having a strong online presence. If you've got retail license, use that. There's no reason why I can't open up a retail space, or just if you got it, sell it. We've got to hustle.
And how about you, Mark?
I think the simplicity of things, like where people have been saying, going to dehydrated garnishes, that menus you can reproduce time and time again. If the supplier runs out of something, you're not caught short. I think those trends will really continue. And I would love to see if this disco colourful drinks trends takes off, because it does bring a bit of fun back. And I think people still want to see that fun colour, simply made. You can't really go wrong.
Anyone else want to jump in there with any practical advice for what people can think about?
Just a weird side note about disco, because I've spent the past 2 weeks doing a lot of research because I'm writing an article about it. One of my sort of facts or findings has been, what is a disco drink? And what's quite interesting is actually from the disco era, there were no cocktail menus. So it's an interesting idea that we're looking to sort of list disco drinks. And we seem to have this sort of frame of reference, or this point of reference, sort of the late 70s. But when you speak to bartenders who actually worked in Studio 54 or back then, they would be offended if you asked them for a menu, because their sort of attitude was like, well, we know how to make all of the drinks, and if we can make it, we'll make it. But don't just sit there sort of ordering drinks because you're a dick, basically. They kind of almost had that attitude that you don't need cocktail menus, and the only cocktail menus that they could remember from that period were more sort of in fine dining restaurants, which might have a little selection of mixed drinks and such. And I think that's just for me the only reason I mentioned that. I think that just kind of is quite interesting, just overall, to put things into perspective a little bit. Like, do we actually need menus? Could there be sort of almost looking back in the past, and could those attitudes change? I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting and valid observation that I'm still sort of turning around in my mind. Sorry.
No, it's fascinating. But just to go back to practical tips, what people can do now if they're thinking about revamping their menu or looking towards winter, getting through winter, and ingredients, techniques, flavours. What other practical advice can we give to the audience?
As Zoe said, right?
Yeah.
The shrubs she mentioned, preservatives, using acids, just minimizing wastage, and not necessarily having to have like the freshest and most seasonal thing on the menu. And all of this, I think, to a certain degree, whether it's disco drinks or batching, RTD, using acids, preservatives, all that kind of stuff. Interesting enough, I think that's been something that's been happening over the past few years anyway. I think we've just got more of a reason, and good that it has been happening, because I think a lot of bars and bartenders are a little bit more prepared for that. So yeah, I guess carry on doing that.
So we've got the results from the poll. So the question was, which pandemic trends do you think will last in the long term? Shorter drinks lists got no votes. Drinks that are perceived to be healthier got 35%. QR codes instead of physical menus, 35%. And takeaway and bottled cocktails, 30%. I'm quite surprised, actually, that shorter drinks lists didn't get any votes at all.
I'm surprised that people want to keep QR codes as well so much.
That sounds like good news for you, Mark, with all the money you've been spending on apps and things.
I've written those ones down. I'll take them back to the boss. That's good.
I guess one good thing about a QR code is that you go home and you've still got people's menus on your phone, which is another great thing for the bar, and also for helping you remember where it was that you went last night.
And so for all that we were saying about health and wellness, 35% of the audience think that the drinks that are perceived to be healthier, very careful about not to say healthy drinks, will continue into the long term.
I definitely think they will. Yeah, there's definitely a market for it out there. People are drinking less and less. But like I said, that they don't want to drink every single day of the week. So there's still a market for that Monday to Thursday crew that want to go out and want to drink something that's low. It's then there's some great products out there, great products on the no and low market at the moment, which people really need to get out there and discover. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere.
So we'll finish with a bit of crystal ball gazing. So I'm going to say, in 12 months' time, where do you think we'll be in terms of drinks menus and consumer tastes? I'm going to ask Mark first.
Yeah. So for me, I think, or would like to see anyway, that there'll be a bit of an ease up middle of next year, where I do see there being shorter menus still and tighter, more experience, but I think natural progression of things, by the middle of next year, people get twitchy fingers and thumbs and they'll want to bring in something exotic and different. So I think we'll start to experiment a bit more towards the end of next year, and really just bring in that kind of something different for people. And I think explode on that classics more. We'll have had Brexit and whatever that brings, and supply chain issues, and we'll be ready for the Euros, a great summer, and kind of, I think, really let it explode from that point. I'd love to see. Maybe that's maybe hopeful.
Well, I like an optimist. Zoe, how about you?
Yeah, I think that if everything's back to normal, it's going to be crazy this time next year. We're all going to be just experimenting with the things that we've learned about at home, and really happy to be back with familiar drinks. I think there needs to definitely be a familiar part of your menu. A fun, familiar part, which everybody knows, with the porn stars and the mojitos. And then maybe some really interesting, we've got to keep an eye on what people are looking at now online, with some really interesting different spirits on there.
Do you think people will go out as much as they did, or will they be drinking more at home?
I think they'll go out as much as they did. I think we all want to get back out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Julian, how about you? Where are we going to be in 12 months?
Oh, I'm going to be the pessimist. Just recording a conversation I had with Declan McGurk a few weeks ago, ex Savoy. He, when I was trying to get some sort of predictions out of him, he put it very friendly but bluntly. At this stage, prediction or trying to predict anything is a bit of a mug's game, especially 12 months ahead. So I can, I can only reiterate what I hope rather than what I predict, and what I hope. I think one of the key things that we've touched on today is being reactive, really, and that goes for cocktail menus, the way that bars are working with brands and so forth. Just really kind of hopefully taking to heart some of the hard lessons that we've learned over this period, and that in the future, were something like this happen again, we'll hopefully be a bit more mentally prepared to sort of react to it in the best way possible, and continue to support ourselves as a community. Hopefully there's going to be an industry in 12 months that are still going to be pushing those buttons.
And Chris?
I think I'd love to share Mark's optimism, but I think with Julian here, it's kind of, I'm excited to see what we hold, but it like you said, rightly so, it is a mug's game, trying to think about where we'll be in 12 months. But I'm excited to see where we will be as an industry in 12 months. I'm curious to see how we come together as a community and as an industry, and also to see what people can do when when the brands and the larger companies aren't spending huge swathes of cash on bars, on lighthouse bars, but actually supporting everyone and seeing what bars that you may not ordinarily have heard of or can do and come to the forefront.
So do you think there's going to be a sort of a levelling of the playing field in that respect?
I do. I think it's certainly in what's going on at the moment. £200 on just the menu alone seems a little crass when you can't keep a team together. So without the bells, without the whistles, it'd be great to see what bars can do.
Sounds exciting. I've just got another question in. I think, sorry, it was relating to what you were saying. What does everyone think is the top #1 spirit for 2020?
Oh, the top #1 spirit. Well, if everyone's asking for porn star martinis, then maybe it's vanilla vodka.
Anyone else want to weigh in on what they think the top #1 spirit for 2020 is?
Baijiu? Who knows?
No.
Who knows? I think surely a lot of it also depends on the large scale impact that certain countries that are producing these spirits are affected, and supply routes. As ever, what can we actually get our hands on in 12 months? I think is more the question. And yeah, I mean, if 2021 is anything like 2020, we'll probably see, I don't know, a swarm of locusts decimate vineyards or whatever. It's just who knows? Yeah. Whatever people can get is what I'm going to say.
I'm going to say that the top spirit for this year was gin, because it's easy to drink at home and it's easy to drink in a bar. So
make easy
Sorry.
to make, easy to make as well. Easy.
We should all be distillers. Mark, what about you? What's your prediction?
You can't really go far from what Zoe said there of kind of what people are drinking. And then, but yeah, everyone sort of says the fall off in gin, but then flavored gin and these different flavors is just every shop you go into, there's something different, there's something new, there's something you can't really kind of escape that. And whether it's everyone's cup of tea now or it is distorting what is a gin, I think there's the consumer taste that for 2020 they're still going to lap that up, and I think they have been doing across lockdown and experimenting. So I would say that, but very much as Julian says, it's what's going to happen in future. What impact, what can you get hold of, that something will rise to the top somewhere. and be interesting to see what impact it has.
Great, thank you. Right, well, we're running out of time, so I'm just going to conclude us very quickly to say thanks very much for watching today's session at Imbibe Live Online, part of Global Bar Week. I'd like to thank again my guests, Mark, Zoe, Julian and Chris. And all sessions will be available to watch on demand straight after this one. And don't forget that there's a full week of content still available. So make sure you check out the rest of the programme. Thanks all for joining me, and yeah, see you soon. Bye.